Before we start today's video, we want to bring you a word from our amazing sponsor, BetterHelp. For some time, I've been dealing with intense depression and anxiety. I was overeating and drinking more alcohol than I should have been. I was also exhausted all the time. So I started talking to a therapist. One thing she asked me about was my sleeping habits, because some of my problems could be connected to a lack of sleep. I ended up seeing a sleep specialist, and it turns out that for years I haven't had a good night of sleep because I have severe sleep apnea. I got a CPAP machine, and now I've been sleeping well. Since then, I've been less tired, I've lost weight, stopped drinking as much, I'm more focused, I'm less depressed, and less anxious. Had I not talked to a therapist, I probably would have never have gone to see a sleep specialist, and I may have continued to be tired, depressed, and anxious. Why not take control of your mental health and live a better life with BetterHelp? Over 4 million people have used BetterHelp to live a healthier and happy life. You could be one of them by checking them out at betterhelp.com/criminallylisted. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist, and they'll listen and they give advice that is helpful and unbiased. They have a network of over 30,000 therapists. Personally, what I think is great is that they have a huge range of experts that you may not have where you live. I know that starting therapy is hard, especially when it's face-to-face, but BetterHelp gives you different options when it comes to therapy. You can do your sessions over the phone, via messaging or video chat, whatever feels most comfortable to you. Plus, you'll be able to schedule sessions when it's convenient for you. It's easy to get started with BetterHelp. You start by filling out a questionnaire that helps assess your specific needs, and then they'll match you with a therapist. In most cases, this is done within 48 hours. If you aren't feeling that connection with your therapist, which isn't unusual when it comes to starting therapy, you can switch to a new therapist at no cost. So there's no stressing about things like insurance or finding somebody in your network. Many people focus on their bodies and will spend hours in the gym. Why not give your mind some attention? If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click on the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/criminallylisted. Clicking on that link helps support this channel, and it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Number 3. Usto Hafashimana and Denis Kazungu. Rwanda is a landlocked country in Central Africa. The area was settled by hunter-gatherers about 10,000 years ago. Unfortunately, it's best known for something incredibly tragic that happened there in 1994, which is the Rwandan genocide. In 1994, there were 3 main ethnic groups living in the country: the Hutus, the Tutsis, and the Twa. The Hutus comprised most of the population, and the Tutsi and the Twa were minorities. Beginning on April 7, 1994, the Hutus started slaughtering the Tutsis, Twa, and even moderate members of their own group. The genocide lasted 100 days. It's believed that during that time, 500,000 to 800,000 people were killed. Kigali is the country's capital and largest city. It is also home to 2 alleged serial killers who were arrested in 2023. On December 27, 2022, the headless body of a street boy, only identified as Matteo, was found in a swamp in the city. His head wasn't found. A few days later, on December 30th, 22-year-old Veste Hagamane and 27-year-old Filimon Nazabragazia were working as security guards at a construction site. Suddenly, a man with a machete attacked them. Both were rushed to the hospital. They survived, but they were seriously injured. Hajimani lost his left eye, and Nazabragazi's left hand had been severed. Nearly 2 weeks later, on January 15, 2023, Veste Gafagana was working as a night security guard. He was slaughtered with a machete. On January 18th, 3 days after the last murder, another night security guard was murdered with a machete. He was 21-year-old Gideon Nyonsenga. 12 days after that, the headless body of another man was found. He was identified as 32-year-old Leonce Nishimania. His body was found without a head in some bushes in a residential area. Nishimania was different from the other victims. He had a criminal record and he had just been released from prison. The police interviewed several people and and learned that on the night that he was murdered, he had been hanging around with his close friend, 34-year-old Usto Hafashimana. In one article about the murders, it said they were roommates. Hafashimana came to Kigali in 2008. In 2012, he started burglarizing homes. In 2015, he was sent to jail for burglary. He served about 2 years, and he was released in 2017. The police searched Hafashimana's home, and they found the phones of 3 of the victims. The police interviewed him, and he confessed to attacking 6 people. He was surprised to learn that 2 of the victims survived. He then took the police to the crime scenes and to the well, where he tossed one of the heads. The police recovered the head. Hafashimana said that he killed most of his victims to rob them. When he came across security guards who were sleeping, he attacked them. He said on the night that he killed his friend, Leon Snashimania, they were scoping out a home to rob. Hafashimana murdered him because he thought he was going to turn him in to the police for the murders. Hafashimana also said that he planned on killing 40 people. On February 5, 2023, he was arrested and charged with the 4 murders. It is unclear what happened to 34-year-old Usto Hafashimana after he was arrested. 7 months later, the police in Kigali were called to the home of 34-year-old Denis Kazungu. Kazungu was 7 months late on his rent. He refused to pay 7,000 Rwandan francs, which is about $558 and he also refused to move out. The police knew who Kazungu was. Months earlier, in July, he had been arrested on charges of robbery, use of threats, and rape, among other offenses. When the police tried to force Kazungu to vacate his home, Kazungu fought with them. This led to him being taken to the police station. At the police station, Kazungu did something that shocked the police. He confessed that he was a serial killer, and he had buried the bodies of most of his victims in a pit in the kitchen. The police went to his home and found some mobile devices and the belongings of several women. They dug into the kitchen floor, and they discovered some human remains. They found the remains of 11 women and 1 man. Kazungu confessed that he stalked his victims and picked ones who didn't have much family. Many of them were sex workers. Kazungu had been using the identification of the man he murdered. Kazungu approached the victims at bars and convinced them to come home with him. Once he got them into his house, he would sexually assault them, steal from them, and then strangle them to death. He buried most of the bodies in the kitchen floor. But he said that the 12 bodies weren't his only victims. He had 2 more, and he dissolved their bodies in acid. Kazungu said that he learned how to be a serial killer from studying other serial killers. When asked why he killed the 14 victims, he claimed that they had deliberately given him AIDS. However, he never gave any proof of this. Weeks after 34-year-old Denis Kazungu was arrested, he pleaded guilty to 14 murders. If he was sentenced, that information was now made public. The police have never released the names of Kazungu's victims or when they were killed. Number 2. Oscar Sanchez Garcia. On the morning of April 22, 2023, the police were called to a field near the Trinity River in Dallas, Texas. The new dead body of a woman had been found. She was later identified as 60-year-old Kimberly Robinson. Robinson was the youngest of 5 siblings. She had 3 children, 11 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. She grew up in Dallas and was a devoted Cowboys fan. She was also artistic and attended a high school for the arts. In the spring of 2023, she was working cleaning houses. Also, she was doing sex work. Robinson had been stabbed to death. Months later, on June 24, 2023, another nude body was found 200 yards from where Robinson was found. She was identified as 25-year-old Cherish Gibson from Compton, California. Gibson had 3 sisters. She had been in Dallas on a road trip with her boyfriend and her dog, a Dalmatian named Dodd. It's believed that Gibson was involved in sex work. Like Robinson, she had been stabbed to death. Gibson's phone was found in a field about 1.5 miles from where her body was found. On July 15, 2023, less than a month after the last body was found, the body of a third woman was found. She had also been stabbed. It was in a field close where Gibson's body had been found. She wasn't immediately identified. Then, on July 19, 2023, the police announced that they made an arrest in the 3 murders that were committed over 4 months. They had arrested 25-year-old Oscar Sanchez Garcia, a Mexican national. On March 13, 2023, months before the first murder, Sanchez Garcia had been arrested for domestic violence. The police found Sanchez Garcia because of surveillance footage, which recorded his vehicle in the area where the bodies were found. He lived about 10 minutes from where Robinson and Gibson's bodies were found. The police also discovered that his cell phone was in the areas shortly before the bodies were found. His DNA was also connected to the crimes. 2 days after Sanchez Garcia was arrested, the police announced that they had identified the body of the third victim. She was 31-year-old Terency Janie Henry. Henry had 5 siblings. She was the mother of a son and daughter. 25-year-old Oscar Sanchez Garcia is currently being held in jail with a $6 million bail. Number 1. Raul Meza Jr. On May 24, 2023, the police in Austin, Texas received a phone call. The caller said, "My name is Raul Meza, and you're looking for me." He was right, the police were looking for him. 5 days earlier, the body of his roommate, 80-year-old Jesse Fraga, had been found in his home in Pflugerville, which is a city north of Austin. He was found naked, face down in a bathroom closet, with a belt wrapped around his neck, wrists, and other body parts. He had been cut, stabbed, and strangled. Fraga's niece had called the police and asked them to do a welfare check. Fraga's niece said that they usually talk daily, but she had not heard from him since May 11th. Fraga was last seen alive on May 12th. He was recorded mowing his lawn on his neighbor's doorbell camera. That was the same day that 62-year-old Raul Meza moved out. The police found cigarettes and boots with blood on them in the house and in both Meza and Fraga's cars. This connected Meza to the murder. Meza and Fraga had an unusual relationship that started in 1993 when they met at a church in Austin. At the time, Meza was going through a difficult time in his life. Over 6 weeks, he had been run out of 6 other cities in Texas. Fraga, who was a parole officer, and his wife took pity on him and tried to help him out. They soon became close to him and treated him like a son. But you may be wondering, what did Meza do that was so bad that he was run out of 6 cities? His criminal record goes back to 1973 when he was 13. He was arrested for shoplifting and burglary. In 1974, it's believed that he set his junior high school on fire. He was then sent to a state facility. During that time, he ran away and broke into a store. He was released from the facility after about 5 months. Around 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve 1975, a group of 6 teenagers, including 15-year-old Meza, went to a convenience store in Austin. While 4 of them stood outside and acted as lookouts, Meza and a 14-year-old boy entered the store. Meza was armed with a rifle, and the other boy had a shotgun. 20-year-old college student Joe Ramirez was working in the store by himself. The 2 teenage boys got the money from the register, $113, which is about $645 in 2023, and then they led Ramirez into the walk-in freezer. They forced him to get onto his knees. Then Meza shot him in the right shoulder. Thinking he had killed him, The two teens fled from the store and joined their friends, and then they all ran away. Ramirez wasn't dead. He waited about 20 minutes and then called for help. He survived the shooting. Meza bragged about shooting Ramirez, and it did not take long before someone reported him to the police. On January 4th, 1975, 4 days after the shooting, Meza was brought in for questioning. He confessed to shooting Ramirez. A few weeks later, the court ruled that he could be tried as an adult. In December 1975, he was convicted of aggravated robbery and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He ended up serving about 4 years. After he was released in February 1981, he moved in with his mother and stepfather in Austin. He attended hairdressing school, and then, in late 1981, he was working as a hairdresser. On January 3, 1982, 8-year-old Kendra Page rode off on her bike from her family's home in Austin. A few hours later, a group of kids playing in the schoolyard made a horrifying discovery. They found Kendra's new dead body in a dumpster. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. 3 days later, Meza turned himself in and confessed to the murder. His fingerprint was found on Kendra's bike. In February 1982, Meza pleaded guilty to the murder and he was sentenced to 30 years of prison. But before he could start serving the sentence for murder, he needed to finish serving the 16 years left in his 20-year sentence for aggravated robbery. This made it a 46-year sentence, and he'd finish his sentence in 2016. Meza was not a perfect inmate. A knife was found in his cell. This led to another 4 years being added to his sentence, but that sentence was to run concurrently, so he wouldn't serve any extra time. Meza went up for parole 7 times, and he was denied each time. But, for the most part, Meza behaved himself in prison. He ended up saving enough good time credit. So, based on Texas laws at the time, the authorities had no choice but to release him in June 1993 after serving 11 years and 8 months. People were obviously angry, leading to him moving to 6 different cities in 6 weeks. There were threats of violence against him, and people threatened to burn down the buildings where he had been living. He finally moved in with his mother in Austin. He even held a press conference saying that he was not a danger. He claimed to be a born-again Christian. In an interview with the New York Times, he said, "People will always have their opinions of me, their perceptions on what should be done with me. I myself can only answer very truthfully. I did what the state of Texas asked me to do." In October 1993, Kendra Page's father told the Austin American-Statesman it was time for the protest to end. Meza couldn't leave the state, so they were stuck with him. He said it was best to leave him alone and let the healing begin. During this time, Meza met Jesse Fraga and his wife at church. Meza eventually moved out of his mother's home into a hotel. Meza's freedom was short-lived. In the fall of 1994, about a year and a half after his release, his parole officer went to the hotel room where he was living to check on him. He was supposed to be in the room between 7 p.m. and 6 a.m. He wasn't there when the parole officer went to check on him. At the time, parolees were usually sent back to prison after 3 violations. But it was decided that Meza would return to prison after that single violation. He was scheduled to be released in 2002. Instead, he was transferred to a minimum security prison and he could leave on supervised visits. In 2010, the Fragas brought $20 to Meza while he was in jail so he could buy pants for a job interview. And, for reasons that were unclear, the parole board banned the couple from contacting Meza. The Fragas filed a lawsuit regarding the ban. The parole board ultimately decided to back off the restriction and the lawsuit was dropped. In 2012, Meza moved into a house on Sarah Drive in Austin. In 2016, he completed his sentence and he was no longer on parole. 3 years later, in October 2019, Meza moved in with Jesse Fraga, his wife, and their son. In the next couple of years, Fraga lost both his wife and son to COVID-19. Then on May 12, 2023, Meza moved out, and it was the last day 80-year-old Jesse Fraga was seen alive. Nearly 2 weeks later, on May 24th, Meza called the police. During that call, he made another shocking statement. He said they had murdered a woman on Sarah Drive when he lived on the street. However, he didn't give them her name. After the call, detectives investigated deaths that happened on the street between 2013 and 2021. They found one suspicious death, and they could link Meza to it in several ways. On May 9, 2019, the police were called to the home of 66-year-old Gloria Lofton, who lived next door to Meza. Her dead body had been found in the bedroom. She was naked from the waist down, and 2 shirts had been pulled up over her head. There were signs she had been strangled and sexually assaulted, but the police weren't sure if she had been murdered. An autopsy was performed, and the medical examiner said that the cause of death was undetermined. A sexual assault kit was done, and male DNA was found. A year later, in May 2020, it was entered into the combined DNA index system, also known as CODIS, and it was matched to Raul Meza. Meza, who lived next door to Lofton, moved 4 months after her murder. In May 2020, when his DNA was linked to Lofton, he was living with the Fragas. It's unclear why the police never followed up on the DNA match. One reason is that the crime lab never notified the police that they had made a match, but this has never been verified. An investigation is ongoing as to why the lead was never followed up on. On March 29, 2023, 5 days after 62-year-old Raul Meza called the police, he was arrested. The police found him riding a bike. He had a backpack, and inside of it were a roll of duct tape, zip ties, a flashlight, a .22 caliber handgun, and ammo. At a press conference after he was arrested, a detective said that Meza was, quote, ready and prepared to kill again, and he was looking forward to it, unquote. Detectives have also called him the worst of the worst and a serial killer. They believe that Meza had other victims, and they are currently investigating him in connection with 8 to 10 other murders. One incident they are looking into happened on March 11, 2022. The police were called because someone spotted a man walking around and it looked like he had been in a fight. When the police arrived, he was walking around in a field. The man turned out to be Meza. His hands and mouth were bleeding. The police asked him what happened, and he had no explanation for his injuries. He was asked why he was in the area, and he said that his truck had been stolen. But his truck was found parked on the road about 1.5 miles away. They followed up on this, and he gave an answer that didn't make much sense. He said that the night before, he had given a woman a ride to Hutto. Hutto is a city about 8 miles from where Meza's truck was found. At the time, the police did not follow up on the incident. But on March 12, 2023, months after he was arrested, the police searched the fields on both sides of the road where Meza had been walking. In one of the fields, they found a bag with brass knuckles, a smashed phone, and 2 cell phone cases. They also found what appeared to be a grave site. There was a tarp and some clothing, but no human remains. The police said that decomposing remains could have been scattered by weather and animals. The police are still investigating Meza, and more charges may be coming. At the time of this recording, 63-year-old Raul Meza Jr. is being held at the Travis County Jail. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.